Hi everyone, and thank you for dropping in and joining us on this amazing conference resource. My name is Gaz Kishere and I work for the organisation Love 146, which particularly specialises in working with children who are trafficked and exploited. My colleague Tim will be joining us shortly after my little bit here. So I first latched onto this word collaboration around 15 years ago when I was working across locality networks and across national networks with a particular remit to get diverse organisations to begin to work together, to collaborate together in the hope that together we could accomplish better outcomes. And it really didn't work that well, to be honest, and there were multiple factors that I found that I think contributed to organisations really not going far enough to actually collaborate and to actually see some fruit and some positive outcomes from their efforts. And this little piece will largely be empirical. It's my own observations over that time and my own thoughts and ideas. I hope that some of them are useful. This isn't to tell you or teach you anything. It is primarily to get you thinking, and what got me thinking during that time was the kind of banner statement over the school that my children were going to at the time, and it said, "Let us do nothing apart that can be better accomplished together." And I think that's a good place to start. One of the critical issues I have found in working together and trying to get different people to work together is that of organisational structure. Now, we can blame the structures if we want to, and I probably will, but we need to remember that every time we seek to change or deconstruct in some way, establish structures so that we can work better together, so that we can actually accomplish our own organisational objectives, what quickly builds those kind of organisational pyramids back up again is the fact that those organisational structures exist in our own minds. It is us that brings those frameworks to the way that we work, and they are long established shapes of our working together. And with collaboration, such an on-trend word at the moment, almost everywhere I go, whether it's a small grassroots charity or NGO, or whether it's a government minister or a state organisation, collaboration is the buzzword, and it probably should be, but it's probably likely that this isn't the first time it's been a buzzword. And it's out there in organisations, it's out there in the funding and grants sector, and in the recent Centre for Social Justice inquiry on modern slavery in the UK, it was a strong thing that we are not going to get far enough, quickly enough, unless we work together better than we are now. And you'll see the CSJ inquiry attached at the bottom of this talk. I kind of got this picture that I found helpful, and it was of a cake. And most people that I've worked with over the years seem to think that collaboration is the nice layer of icing that's just arrived to finish off a pre-existing cake. And the reality is it isn't. If anything at all, collaboration is the ingredient that has been sadly missing. And in reality, we therefore need to remix and rebake our organisational cakes if we're to fully embrace it and be shaped by it. And if it's to do any work at all in us, to accomplish anything good through us, then it must reshape us. There's a little illustration going to appear on the PowerPoint now, and it's a simple idea. It's probably common practice to see organisational structures in a pyramid form. Everybody knows who the boss is and how the structure comes down from there out into the operations and field work. In my experience, when we come together in those organisational structures, we tend to only fit together at our lowest common denominator. There is a very small level of crossover right down there at the bottom, right at that bottom point. that does not require us to change. It enables us to actually collaborate, if that is what we're doing, very easily, because it costs us very little. It hasn't changed how we work. We've given potentially nominal time to it, motivated by many factors, funding being one of them. And if that's simply how we work, if it doesn't impact our organisational structures, then that's all it will accomplish, is those tiny little pieces of work together, and that isn't enough, folks. The other illustration that's just popping up now is just a simple idea. I've heard it out and about in national and international networks now. I think it offers us a simplistic picture, but probably one that we need to consider. And that is when we gather as organisations around purpose at the centre, it enables us to keep some of our organisational distinctives, the stuff that makes us us, the stuff that continues to sharpen what we uniquely are bringing to the table, but it allows us to connect on many more sides and across many more issues. And actually, going from representatives of our organisations collaborating on our behalf, I think we begin to see a sense of teaming it emerge, and a sense of actually standing together across many areas in this issue. A colleague of mine once said that we can work together when purpose is the leader in the room, and I think that's why that illustration, it shows gathering around purpose. I do want to be positive though. I would say in the 15 years that I've worked around these issues, the work that I've been doing in the counter-trafficking sector is far more promising. I think it's probably down to the fact that children and the motivation to see the lives of children impacted through our work is a strong motivator, the golden thread that flows through everything that we're doing. And it enables us to meet and converse and strategize in a different way. And I've seen this a lot, and I think it's a very, very, very positive aspect of the counter-trafficking community. Just to give a snapshot on one of the current contexts Love 146 is working in, without mentioning nation context or names. Going into a different country and looking at how we might work there, and doing a scoping exercise and finding out which other organisations are contributing to what. You frequently meet some organisations that are really big on collaboration, and their definition or their outworking of collaboration seems very different to my own. My collaboration is what is the need, who's already working in that, what contribution can we make, who can we make that contribution with. Some people's understanding of collaboration seems to be we are the centre of that collaboration. We will collaborate if you will gather around our ideas, if you will centralise us and our branding, if you will centralise us in the funding pot. And I do not think that's the spirit of collaboration that we need to push through at this time. You can call it collaboration if you like. The reality is it often contributes to our gathering around very short-term goals and nominal long-term impact. I think the grant-making sector contributes to this in that people get together and they develop a piece of work together while the funding is there and stop when the funding is gone. I don't think that is the kind of relationship dynamic and gathering around purpose that we need. I had some colleagues in London once. A friend of mine was delighted that like 26 organisations were meeting at the crack of dawn so that they could just think about some of the issues that were facing their city and their locality. And it sounded very exciting, and the conveyor of this story, he too was very excited. And so I asked, so what are they doing? And he said, doing? They're not doing anything. Doing something would damage the relationships. And we need relationships underpinning all that we do, but we need relationships that are mature enough to cope with the challenges of actually working and going into this landscape together to contribute towards change. And I'd like to see a sense of collaboration where we move beyond being representatives of our organisations, and that our organisations have a strong sense of involvement with the other organisations that we're working with. I think it's critical for us to move beyond short-term organisation-led collaborations and towards actually becoming co-workers in the long term, a counter-trafficking community, if you like. I think too there's a timeline that I've identified whereby perhaps over the last 20 years now there's been buzzwords around consultation and round tables, coffee tables, dinner tables, any table you can gather around that illustrates that people are talking and being willing to meet together to talk about shared issues. And I think that's a very limited aspect of collaboration and working together that perhaps, and actually as I've met groups and organisations, that they're probably well frustrated with now. There's been a lot of talk and frequently very few outcomes of those types of meetings. I know when Love 146 began working in Moldova, it was very frustrating to consider the fact that there were these huge national get-togethers across all of the sectors, and there would be a consultation on the trafficking issues in the nation. A strategy would be formed, often with corrupt officials linked to trafficking in the room. The first people to know about it would be the traffickers. They would go away with a capacity to change their trafficking methodologies over a period of 2 months or less, right through their networks, right through national borders. And it would take us a good year to actually implement the ideas because of the limitations and the complexities of how we were working together. I've seen it improve. I've seen in Romania, thanks to some intelligence that came out of Greece about the context that young people were currently being trafficked from and the recruitment methods, that 4 very different organisations managed to pull together a national strategy in a year, as well as a very well thought through local impact tool to educate, inform and involve young people in safeguarding their communities. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum, where we have this idea of collaboration and coming together around a round table that takes a very long time to deliver, and also the kind of communications and relationships that can lead to a very quick, well thought through response. To give you an example, through networks that are beginning to think and work differently, gathering around purpose, is when you get up in the morning, you don't have to re-establish that you're in this together and you're working together for the best outcomes of the child. I remember a phone call from Greece from a colleague saying that he had seen a girl being walked through a city, and possibly with people who were about to take her away and to force her into prostitution. And through the sharing of that story and some of the things that were seen and some of the intelligence that was gathered, we could tell where that person had come from. There were communications taking place very, very quickly, whereby people were talking across now 6 nations within 24 hours. Airports were contacted, flight plans looked at, knowing who went from where to where, arriving where. And within 24 hours, we knew who the girl was, the family that she was meant to be staying with in Greece, and a visit was made to her home to ensure that she was safe. And fortunately, on this occasion, she was. Fortunately, it wasn't a scene of exploitation taking place. But the bottom line is, it could have been. And as a result of that kind of working together, an intervention could have taken place. So I've talked about these round tables and how they've been going now for about 20 years, and has a tendency towards being a little bit bored, a little bit disinterested in more of those. And I think it's because there's something else that needs to land now. And we need to shift from being around a table consultatively to this next illustration, which is simply this. I don't know what table you call this, but we need to be on the same side of it, where we are facing the issues together and beginning to develop cohesive strategies that we will deliver in partnership for the long term. So you can find a name for that if you like, but I think it's a very different progression from being around tables, loose relationships and ties, and very slow to deliver outcomes. So yeah, I think that's one solution to our being talked out. Getting together, solutions-based strategy development, and the kind of relationships where we feel that it's not contractual, it's collaborative, it's relational, and we are comrades in the issue. So, I'm nearly wrapping up. Just another thought is when you go into different places to work and you're trying to find out who's doing what, there are other people who do it on their own. They turn up, they don't have need of lots of grant-making partnerships, they've got very strong ideas of their own and financial backing to do it, and they're going to do it anyway. And I find that very noble and very strong. I think that's not a bad thing, you know. Even if no one else is going to do this, we're going to do it. But continuing that into collaborative relationships often means that there's a very low level of commitment, if a level of commitment at all. And whilst the drive to be the biggest, the best, the first, to be the most known does a lot for your organisational branding, it might do a lot for your financial funding, it can do very, very little at times in terms of making wholesale impacts on an issue. It looks good on paper, but doesn't necessarily have the impact that even if those organisations looked at it, that they want to accomplish. I think some of that stuff we're very good at in England. Hopefully we're getting away from it, but it's very empire orientated, collaborating over a sense of you are here to build up what I'm in instead of us working together. And I think it has a tendency to develop programs and responses to these issues that may be incredibly innovative, maybe wonderfully closing the door to some of the deficits that are out there, and there are many, but ultimately it creates a high dependency construct where if suddenly your funding stops or you decide that you don't want to do it anymore, that work disappears from the landscape, and that, quite frankly, is not good enough or the best way to work. So, yeah, some of that as well is I've seen that in my own work in other contexts where there is a default to triumphantly arriving in some of these work contexts and doing stuff to people and doing stuff for people, and rarely working out ways in which we can do stuff with people that enables them. So collaboration isn't simply organisation to organisation. It's with the countries that we're working with, it's with the communities that we're working with and coming alongside, and it's also with, at times, particularly in the adult context, seeing some of those survivors come through and participate as well. Collaboration is pain. It is not the easiest thing to do. It's not always the quickest thing to do. And unless you've really seen it at work and know that the outcomes can be better, you're unlikely to push through and really commit to it. And there is a pain factor, but I can encourage you and say it is worth pushing through. And we need to find different ways of working together where finances, where funding bodies, where European grants aren't defining us and aren't forcing us into short-term commitments and or no commitments at all, and contributing to competition and duplication and replication. That is not going to help us get very far at all. If there was a kind of rallying cry for the word collaboration and its outworking, it would be that I feel it enables us to move towards what I call a true corporate. And what I mean by that is a corporate spirit, a sense of being in something really together. And it's a really nice feeling when you're in that space where you hear about an organisation up the road or in another country who are standing for the same stuff that you're standing for, and you get to celebrate with them, because a win for them is a win for us all. And if we can become the kind of people who will collaborate to the degree that we're prepared to make a name for someone else's organisation, where we are prepared to push the other forwards because actually they may be best. They may be the person with the best skill sets or the most organisational understanding of an issue. If we can get to those places, then I think we'll experience some of that. And it's a nice place to work. It's not a nice place to work where you bitch and get upset and cross because somebody's doing something and they've got the attention or they've got the funding. Yeah, sure, that really does suck. But I'm telling you that the corporate spirit and cheering one another on and the sense that a win for you is a win for me, is a win for us all, is a much better place to be. It's much better for us, and it's much better for the kids that we're trying to impact. So that's me. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm going to hand you over to my co-worker Tim.
Hi, my name's Tim Waldron and I have the privilege of being CEO of Love 146 Europe. I've worked for international non-governmental organisations for the last 12 years, reflecting my personal mission to see every young person given the opportunity to achieve their innate potential. I began my journey as an abolitionist 3 years ago when I joined Love 146 to develop its work across Europe. Being a lawyer by training, I quickly sought to get to grips with the data and evidence concerning the global trade in human beings. What I discovered was that it's very different to other global issues such as, say, the environment, which, if we're ever going to resolve, it's going to require a multi-generational effort. No, what I realised was that with enough awareness, enough political will, with enough outrage and effort, we could end this heinous trade in my lifetime. Now, I'm a pragmatic activist. I know that we're never going to eradicate this scourge on humanity completely. But what I aspire to is Professor Kevin Bell's definition of abolition. That we keep going until human trafficking is as socially unacceptable and prevalent as cannibalism. And I believe that's achievable within our lifetime. But my pragmatism also tells me that this is too great a task for any one individual, any one organisation, business, government or transnational agency. There's an African proverb that I often refer to. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. We have to go as fast as we can. We have to. There are too many men, women and children that are ensnared in slavery today for us to go at a leisurely pace. But the distance that we have to travel means that as abolitionists, we must travel together. When I joined Love 146, what I discovered was an anti-trafficking sector that was fractured. It was politically divided, often suspicious and hostile, and at times it was downright unfriendly. But I've been around the non-profit block enough to realise the source of this division. David Batstone summed it up perfectly in a recent article for The Guardian's Modern Day Slavery Hub. He illuminated the fact that agency's first instinct is to think of its own need for money and its own need for resources. For the last 2 years, Love 146 has also supported the work of the UK think tank, the Centre for Social Justice. They carried out a 2-year inquiry into modern slavery, culminating in a report that was published with the title "It Happens Here," equipping the United Kingdom to fight modern slavery. In taking evidence from across the sector, the panel inquiry reported a real lack of coordination and collaboration, and at times an unwillingness to share intelligence, information and resources, both between NGOs themselves and with other statutory authorities. This is often due to a lack of trust between agencies and a need for more open information sharing practices. Furthermore, the report also observed that these factors can too frequently manifest themselves as a culture of conflict, denying NGOs the benefits of greater collaboration and ultimately adversely impacting on the positive development of work to support the UK's response to modern day slavery and human trafficking. That's a real indictment on the NGOs and the broader sector, but it's not just the NGOs that struggle with this. Roger Plant, former head of the International Labour Organisation's Programme to Combat Forced Labour, has observed infighting and jealousy among the different UN agencies engaged on the issue of slavery or trafficking, with the main struggle being between different bodies with different mandates, not being able to agree on who can do what best, and so tripping over each other. Now, this reflects the complex reality of modern day slavery. It's a labour issue, it's a human rights issue, a migration issue, a criminal issue, and work to oppose it extends right across the front line, rescue operations through to high-level political lobbying, campaigning and coordinating with partners working often in incredibly dangerous, intense environments around the world. But what Annie Kelly, the Guardian journalist, dispassionately observed is that in a sector that's so divided by geography and so crippled by lack of funding, it's the ability to work together, to share information and crucially to share resources that has the capacity to transform organisations into a global movement that's capable of tackling one of the most complex, one of the most challenging human rights issues of our time. I believe that what we're currently seeing is a cultural sea change. I've been really encouraged to see a more strategic approach to partnership working begin to emerge in recent times. Strategic thinking that is putting collaboration at the core of long-term planning. The Alliance to End Slavery and Trafficking, a test, is showing real promise as a national coalition of 12 US NGOs working together to push key anti-trafficking legislation in the US. Here in the UK, we've convened a fledgling Alliance on Care for Trafficked Children, a group of charities committed to developing practical, sustainable approaches to care delivered through a collaborative approach so that children trafficked into the UK receive the very best care provision, giving them what they need, when they need it most. Ultimately, what we're trying to achieve is a situation whereby every child that is trafficked into the UK and subsequently rescued has a place, an appropriate place, a safe place where they can receive the care and the trauma recovery and the education that they need to be empowered to make their own decisions about their own futures. I've got some experience of this. I recently stood down after a 5-year term as chairman of YMCA England. Most people are unaware that the YMCA is the largest youth movement in the world. From its humble beginnings in a room above a draper's shop in the shadow of St Paul's Cathedral in the City of London, it's grown to become a worldwide organisation, reaching around about 45 million members in 119 countries worldwide. It's got a federated structure that, in theory at least, facilitates collaboration stretching across local, to national, to regional, to global. The YMCA in England consists of 121 local YMCAs, embedded within communities throughout the country. And like us all, we've been challenged by the prevailing economic conditions. Having been around for almost 170 years, we've also accrued our own structural deficit in the form of a £70 million shortfall in our defined benefits multi-employer pension scheme. Now, in order to mitigate the operational risks posed by this deficit, we had to collaborate to find and then implement a solution. Each YMCA's slice of the deficit was different. Some had more, some had less. When we identified a potential solution, some YMCAs stood to accrue a short-term gain financially, others a short-term loss. But it was only when we came to a collective realisation that those who stood to gain most if we implemented the solution were not any one or other YMCA. Those who stood to gain most from the implementation, or indeed lose the most if we failed to do it, were the thousands of vulnerable young people we serve each and every day. It was only when we realised this that we found the common ground sufficient for us all to stand upon. We've got a long way to go as abolitionists, but as Love 146, we believe that our goal is righteous and our aim is true. What I hope that we've been able to convince you through this short session is that we've got a better chance of getting there if we go together. Okay, so I thought I was finished, but I just really wanted to add this final piece. Collaboration is tough. It's hard work. It requires determination. It doesn't come easy. It often runs counter to our first instincts. When times are tough financially, it can come at a cost. But I absolutely believe that it's in the best interest of the children that we serve. We have to remember why we're doing this. We have to remember what the goal is. And the goal is to stop children being sold and being bought and being exploited. And I believe that ending that is worth our best efforts. I believe that it's worth the hard work, that our determination will be rewarded. And I long for the day when we can look at Love 146's vision for the abolition of child trafficking and exploitation, nothing less, and say it's done. I look forward to the day when I can submit the forms to the Charity Commission closing down Love 146 Europe because our purpose has been completed. But we're only going to do that if we do it together, and we're not going to do it without collaboration. So please, I urge you, in your strategy, in your planning, look to how you can collaborate best. Look to how you can collaborate most effectively. And if we can serve you in any way as you look to do that, please, please get in contact. Thank you for being part of this conference. We hope that you'll gain a huge amount from it. And as you go back into your workspaces, as you go back into your everyday reality, please look to how you can collaborate best. Thank you.
We are Love 146.